few months ago, the United States has granted TPS, which is temporary protected status, to Cameroon. However, it seems like many Cameroonians living in the United States are not aware of this new status that they could be under. And because of that, we have decided tonight to talk about the temporary protected status that is being granted to Cameroon. What is a temporary protected status? Is TPS, which is again temporary protected status, the same as asylum? Can you still apply for TPS if you already have a case in process with the United States Immigration Services? Why was Cameroon designated under TPS, and how does that affect Cameroonian national currently living in the United States? Stay with us to get all your questions answered. At the live production, Andy Martinez, and on the mic, Pastor Mercy Denebou-Boire, CEO of Leadership Excellence for Women by Women, a Dallas-based women empowerment nonprofit organization. Precious women of valor, precious men of valor, good afternoon and welcome to Leadership Excellence for Women by Women.
And this insulin resistance is because
93% of juvenile victims of sexual abuse is by people they know.
Because you are illegal, you can even benefit from it because you're being a victim.
People paid for that.
The roadmap that you had to follow.
Pouvoir payer donc le crédit bancaire qu'ils vont te faire.
Non, on pensait que c'était une Américaine qui allait venir. Donc nous, on était déjà braqués.
Precious women of valor, precious men of valor, good evening and welcome to the talk show of Leadership Excellence for Women by Women. I am pleased to present our talk show entitled today, in episode 1, Temporary Protected Status, TPS, Cameroon, for Cameroonian national currently living in the United States, and we will be talking about eligibility and exception. To discuss this, we are honored to have on our talk show 3 great panelists. I will start with Diana KONATÉ. She is the National Policy Director at African Communities Together, ACT. Diana is based in Washington, D.C. Can we please have her on the screen? Hello, Diana. How are you?
Hi, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Sure. And to make sure, is it Diana or Diana? I want to make sure.
So my French speakers is Diana, but it's Diana. Diana is fine.
All right. So we just want to make sure that we are getting this right. And our second panelist, also based in Washington, D.C., is HIWOT BERIHUN. Can we have her on the screen, please? While we are waiting for her, she is the legal director of African Community Together, ACT, the same organization where Diana works. Hello, HIWOT. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sure. It's a great pleasure having you. And our third, but not the least panelist is Modeste MBUNWE. Can we please have Mr. Modeste on the screen? He is a DevOps engineer and the English program anchor at Media 2 Africa. Modeste is originally from Cameroon and he's based now in Washington, D.C. How are you, Modeste? How are you?
Hello, I'm doing fine. Hello, co-panelists. Hope you are doing fine too.
And it's a great pleasure to have all of you. Let me just start by saying that, ladies, you look absolutely beautiful. And Mr. Modeste, you look very sharp. Thank you so much. So I would like, again, to thank our panelists for being with us. I would like each one of you to introduce yourself to our viewer. Let's begin with Diana.
Sure. Again, my name is Diana KONATÉ. I am the policy director here at African Communities Together. And essentially my role here is to fight for immigration policies that benefit African immigrants here in the U.S. I've been with the organization for a little bit over 4 years, and I'm based in our D.C. office.
Thank you so much, Diana. And HIWOT, hello again. Would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is HIWOT BERIHUN. I am the DMV legal director. I am a licensed attorney. I've been with organization a little bit over 5 years. I love helping immigrants, getting them status, informing them about their rights and benefits like this. So I'm really happy to join here and everybody here.
Thank you so much again, Hiot. And again, we have Mr. Modeste that would like him to introduce himself to our viewer, please.
Hello, merci. Hello, co-panelists. My name is Modeste MBUNWE. I am a DevOps engineer, equally teach AWS Solutions Architect and DevOps Engineering, and also English Program Anchor person at Media to Africa, residing here in Washington, D.C., USA. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you all for making yourself available for our community, brothers and sisters, actually from the Cameroonian community, because we are here tonight for them. Today in episode 1, we want to bring awareness on the TPS program that the United States granted to Cameroonian nationals currently living in the United States. So in the next hour, we will discuss about eligibility, TPS versus asylum. We will also talk about exception. And next Friday, in episode 2, we will go over the fast approaching application deadline for Cameroonian nationals currently living in the United States. I will also give opportunity next week to Diana and lawyer Hiot to make a call to action, because this is really what it's about. To give a quick background, I believe, Diana, I contacted you a couple of weeks ago. It was really to discuss about and plan, hopefully, to bring you on the show for TPS Mali that is currently on the table. And during the discussion, you mentioned to me that your organization was able to really work hard to grant, to push United States government to give TPS status to Cameroon. However, you gave me an information that I found was very alarming. And right there, I decided this is very important. Let's push the discussion about Mali and bring the subject about Cameroon. So, first of all, I would like us to debunk some myth about TPS. Diana, what is a temporary protected status? Let's just first go into that definition to see what is going on here.
Sure. So temporary protected status, or TPS, is a designation that the U.S. government will give to a country that is experiencing conditions that make it unsafe for people to be returned to that country. There are 3 categories that would qualify a country for a TPS designation. So 1, if there is ongoing armed conflict in a country. 2, if there is an environmental disaster and the foreign government asks the U.S. to designate it for TPS. And 3, if there is an extraordinary but temporary condition in that country. So for example, Ebola. When there was an Ebola outbreak in West Africa, TPS was granted for Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone, 3 of the countries where that outbreak were. So those are the 3 circumstances under which the U.S. government will grant a designation of TPS for a country. Once a country has been designated for TPS, nationals from that country who are currently living in the U.S., you cannot be living outside of the U.S. You have to be living inside the U.S. But those nationals from the country that has been designated are able to apply for TPS. It protects people from deportation. It allows them to apply for work authorization. In some instances, people are also allowed to get travel authorization. And in addition to those, there are also indirect benefits. So, for example, people can get driver's licenses. Some people become eligible for other benefits, such as health insurance. So it's really a big deal when a country is designated and really can have life-changing impacts on people's lives.
Absolutely. And before I give an opportunity to Modeste, I want Diana to explain something here so that we are very clear. TPS is designated for a national people from a country that are already within the United States? Yes or no?
Correct. You must be living in the US. And when a country is designated, DHS will specify the date that nationals from that country have to have been in the US. So for Cameroon, for example, they had to have been in the US, I want to say June of 2022. So anybody who came after that date, so if you came, if you were in Cameroon, if you were somewhere else and you came to the US, let's say December 2022, currently you do not qualify for TPS.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because some people might think like, okay, I'm in Africa, I'm in Cameroon right now, let me plan to come here. Well, it doesn't work like that. This is very specific to people who are already living in the United States. And I wanted to emphasize that because today, I don't know if I should say we have a porte-parole, but we have a representative from the Cameroonese community, Modeste. And for an effective discussion, I've asked Modeste, thank you so much also for doing that for us, Modeste, to get feedback and question in his Cameroonese community living in the United States. Modeste, over to you.
Thank you, then HIWOT. I had the opportunity to speak with the Cameroonian folks in some events, now it's summer in the USA. So I had an opportunity to hang out with some of them and they only come out when we have events of that nature, like barbecue, baby showers and stuff. So, and the question most of them were saying, is TPS same as asylum? Or if not, what is the difference?
Yeah. So let's have our lawyer here to respond to that.
Sure. I think most of the time when people ask this question, it's a very appropriate question. It's not something that's outside of what's defined for both benefits. So these both benefits are designated to help people that are fleeing unsafe situations for the reasons that Diana had mentioned earlier from their countries. The primary difference between a TPS and asylum is TPS is not individualized, whereas an asylum is an individual claim. And moreover, an asylum leads to a green card potentially with a successful claim. TPS, as it states in its name, that it's temporary and it's based on country designation. So asylum, anybody can ask if you're fleeing persecution. TPS, it has to be designated from DHS. And I think later on, we'll go on whether or not you'll be able to apply for both and what happens thereafter.
Thank you so much, HIWOT, for that explanation. Modeste, would you like to add something?
I think that gives a clear kind of difference between TPS and asylum. I know a lot of questions, like you did elaborate. Most people are like, okay, the same issues that have pushed United States to give this TPS, put it open for Cameroonians, are still continuing. And what if other folks who are still fleeing away from the issues that has put a TPS in place are still coming in? And why would they not be eligible to file for TPS?
That's a really great question. So I think TPS, when it was designated, they have some policy procedures, I would assume, that to put it a certain timeline and a deadline. That's definitely some procedure that I'm not particularly aware of, but it's good. Like, I think they're suffering, like in Mali, like what we're fighting for is to get some temporary status, but they definitely have certain restrictions in terms of timing.
Yeah. And also, I would like to add something to what you were saying, HIWOT. You said that TPS is, should I say, for a group of people, whereas asylum is individual. Am I correct?
Exactly. So an asylum, anybody can apply for an asylum. It's an individual claim. But TPS, if you're from Cameroon and if you meet all the eligible requirements, it's for everybody that's from that country. And so you're not gonna be able to say, oh, I'm a Cameroonian and then I can't get TPS if you meet the requirements. Like, you will get it.
Yeah. And I like what you just said, Lawyer HIWOT, if you meet the requirement, because let's make clear here. That's why I want us to really take this tonight, step by step. We're going to break it down for our brothers and sisters from Cameroon to really help them to understand. Yes, Cameroon has been designated as under TPS, but there are eligibility. We're going to get to that in a second. Before that, I would like to ask you, still with you, Lawyer HIWOT, how long is the TPS designation period for? I know Diana talked about it. She brushed it lightly earlier on, but let's dig now into the timeline and the time frame for this. Can we have that on the screen, please? Andy, over to you here.
Yeah, sure. So the TPS for Cameroon is designated until December 7th, 2023. So that is not that much time. I have clients that take some months getting documents and paperwork together. So yes, you can wait until a couple of months before to apply and to submit your documents. But at the end of the day, we want to maximize the time that you are here lawfully, legally, so you can enjoy the benefits of being in lawful status, driving license, and medical state-based benefits, and etc. Did you want me to go through the eligibility standards, or should we wait later?
Actually, Andy, please put the right slide. We need the slide regarding the designation period. That's very important. It should be the slide before the one that you just played. So let's wait for a second and hopefully we can have that up. So Lawyer HIWOT, while we are waiting for him, I would like us to really specify the time frame, because I believe the initial period of designation of a foreign state under paragraph 1, which is specified by the Attorney General, is, I believe, no less than 6 months and not more than 18 months. Am I correct?
Yeah, this designation period is 18 months. So we've already passed the 12-month period, because the initial physical presence requirement was June 7, 2022. But you also must have had continuous presence since April 14, 2022. So you must have had been a resident of the US, or meaning like you were here and you had some sort of physical touch within the US since April 14, 2022, which is what we call continuous. You could have, for instance, say you're a student, you were here, and then you went back to Cameroon on some sort of, vacation or home, and then you came back in June, you still would be able to, you'll be able to apply for the benefit.
Okay, so you talk about a student, but what about a regular Cameroonese citizen who, let's say, okay, had a death in the family and had to go to Cameroon and came back, still eligible, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for the clarification. Modeste, I will let you ask HIWOT the next question regarding how can somebody apply for TPS? If you
yes, I think that is a very good opportunity you've given me to put this out because many folks they want to know, like, can you still apply for TPS if you have already a case in process with the United States Immigration Services? And a lot of them too are kind of not very much aware of the resources available, like what emails, what phone numbers to call to kind of initiate the process.
Sure, yeah. You can have multiple petitions or applications with USCIS. For instance, if you have a pending asylum case, you can apply for TPS. If you have a U or a U visa or a VAWA case, which take extremely long time, you can still apply for those TPS. Because sometimes when you have U or VAWA cases, which is Violence Against Women Act, or U visa, which is a crime act, you may not be able to get eligible or be eligible for a work permit. And then having the TPS status will allow you to be eligible for employment card, and then you can apply using that path.
Okay, thanks. Then what about the resources like email addresses or phone numbers?
Sure, I can share that. So our organization, I'm based out of DC. Our organization has resources in the DMV area to assist, and our phone number is 202-816-0416. And then our email address is dmv@africans.us. That is if you're in the DC area. Sometimes we hold legal clinics, and we have walk-ins. Please email us or call us. We also have offices in New York and in Philadelphia. I encourage folks to call our hotline to get more information on it. And our New York hotline, which number is 347-746-2281. Or you can email us at info@africans.us.
And I will make sure to have all this information up on the description of the video, so that anybody interested can definitely reach out to the office. Lawyer HIWOT, I want to go back slightly to what you just said, because again, we want to really make sure that the information is very educative, and Cameroonians can just take on whatever we are sharing tonight and run with it. So earlier on, you said that, let me just remember what I was going to say. I think it will come back to me because I didn't plan to ask that question. But okay, I remember now. Let's say you have a case of asylum already in, because this is very particular. Normally, please correct me if I'm wrong. With the United States Immigration Service, if you have one case in, you cannot initiate another case in, I would say, in normal time. Am I correct?
I think so. For instance, if you have an asylum case and then you meet the love of your life, yeah, you should go get married, not wait for that asylum case, right? So that would work. Or
okay,
keep
but
that
in
asylum
that
case
case,
as backup.
don't you have to withdraw the asylum case?
No.
Really?
No.
Quite interesting.
Yes.
This is good. I'm learning too. So thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure that we are providing the right information. So before asking the next question to Diana, we would like to know more about Cameroon. As a reminder for those who just joined us, the title of tonight's talk show is Temporary Protected Status, TPS, Cameroon, for Cameroonian national currently living in the United States. And tonight we are discussing about eligibility and exception. In that regard, I would like to ask our third panelist, Modeste, who is a native of Cameroon, to please give us an overview of the situation in his country. Modeste?
Yeah, thank you. Cameroon, as you best know, speaks French and English because Cameroon was colonized by the French and the British. That was after the Germans left. And that also tells you that Cameroon was a very rich country, like when it comes to resources. So all these Europeans, they don't just come to colonize countries that are arid. So Cameroon is fully rich of a lot of mineral resources. The Germans came, and so they tried to stay. The French and the British formed alliances and fought away the Germans while they were concentrating in conquering more colonies across the world. So prior to reunification, Cameroon was kind of separated under these two powerful colonial masters, the British and the English. And the English Cameroon was governed alongside Nigeria under a special protectorate status that the UN, by then, I don't know if the UN had established. So at some point, Cameroonians reunified and became one country as the United Republic of Cameroon, and constitutions were put in place that there was a special clause on the form of the state that it was never going to be tempered with, respecting the two forms of the state, and English and French being two national languages. At some point, the presidents that have ruled Cameroon are still ruling, former President Amadou Ahidjo, who's of late, and the current president, His Excellency Paul Biya, they didn't respect this clause, and at some point changed Cameroon from United Republic of Cameroon to Republic of Cameroon, and they reunited. That explained to everybody that these countries were once separated and they reunited isn't more there, and the Republic now neglected the clauses that were put in the Constitution. And just to give a short resume of what happened, transpired, at some point, minority surviving as a minority alongside a majority, there's always a series of things that would come up. Yeah. And Anglophone Cameroonians believed they are marginalized, and at some point they wanted, like, oh, let's go back to we want to be kind of independent, regain our independence, because one of the clauses the powers in place by then had put together during the voting, the referendum that gave Cameroonians the opportunity to vote either to join Cameroon as a united Republic of Cameroon or join Nigeria. They didn't put that clause if Anglophone Cameroonians could prefer to stay independent. So I'm sure that was the League of Nations that one have kind of forgotten what organization was in place. So they did not put that clause, and English Cameroonians were left just to vote to gain independence by joining Nigeria or joining Cameroon back. And they preferred to join Cameroon. They had cultural ties and a lot with Cameroon. So they preferred to join Cameroon since they didn't have the preferred clause they expected. And it wasn't given to them as an opportunity to argue to be put in place. So they joined French Cameroon. And some of the considerations were that they were not much in terms of population to go solo, to function or exist like an independent country. But statistics shows that English Cameroonians make more than 8 million persons. So, and a very large geographical sphere in Cameroon. So after a lot of political transitions from President Amadou Ahidjo to Paul Biya, and the nature of the state and the English Cameroonian representative in the Paul Biya's government kind of didn't represent them as they would have wished for. And a lot of political, I would say, nationalists of representing the English movement suggested Anglophones gain their independence and go independently, and not having to do with the supposed marginalization from the French Cameroon. So this has sparked a lot in Cameroon, and there have been a lot of political upheavals since it existed, not formally so long ago, but from 2016 to present, there is a lot of what they generally call the NOZO, that is Northwest Southwest political crisis in Cameroon. There's a lot of unrest. Folks have gone to the bush fighting for their independence, and the Biya's government is also cracking down and not giving room for table talks, because many times there was a general national dialogue that was initiated by the government in place, but they didn't give possibilities of true representatives. That is, those who want the separation and independence, total independence. They didn't have the opportunity to represent their views. So politicians who want something else like independent, like stay with Cameroon or federation, are those who spearheaded that general national dialogue. I want to recall people like the late John Frundi, who is a very popular politician that is one of the most popular and English-speaking politicians that it was alleged in 1990 he won the elections to be president of Cameroon due to the minority or also the peace-loving person he was. He didn't want to push for crisis and decided to stay quiet, as there would have been an outbreak of war to put him in place, because that's a kind of a thing in Africa where incumbents hardly accept election defeat. So the crisis has been pending, and a lot of crackdowns and folks, especially males or active youth, have been fleeing Cameroon and finding everywhere possible for accommodation. Some have taken coming to America through other illegal means, flying through like Panama, where they would get visas easily, then trekking, finding their way, which is very tedious. Some have lost their lives and they struggle to get to the borders of America through Mexico. And finally, some of them, I don't know if there's a fence separating America and Mexico. Some, like here, jump the fences and stuff, and some struggle their ways to find themselves in the United States of America illegally. And this, like this TPS came up there. Some who are aware found it like an opportunity to regulate their status in America by applying. But again, it remains a myth, because majority of Cameroonians who are concerned are not very aware of this. I don't know what avenues we need to put in place so some of the majority of them who need it can get this information or watch this program and contact the right quarters. Like this phone number I've taken down, I'll try my very best to share to those who can get it and share to the concerned persons. So that is a kind of a resume of what has happened in Cameroon that has led to this present situation. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Modeste. And just like as a reminder, we will have all the detailed information on how to reach out to HIWOT and Diana for some help. And of course, you know, next week in episode 2, we're going to be talking about the best way to relay the information. And while Modeste, you were talking, I was even thinking about the Embassy of Cameroon, the Consulate of Cameroon. I think they need to hear this. And for the viewers' information, this talk show that we do every Friday is really viewed worldwide. Usually when we post our talk show, it goes to at least 40 countries worldwide. And I'm really making a call here to anyone that will watch this, even if they're not from Cameroon. Please think of the Cameroonese brothers and sisters that may be living in the United States, to whom you can just forward this talk show, and they can just take the right action. So thank you so much again, Modeste, for this overview about your country. That's going to bring us to Diana. You've heard what Modeste just said. Is it why Cameroon was designated for TPS, or is there any other reason?
Yes, that was a very good background, and that's exactly what has led to DHS designating Cameroon. You know, because of the many security issues within the country, making it unsafe. Specifically, what Modeste has mentioned, which has resulted in extremely violent conflict between the state security forces and the armed separatists. But in addition to that, there's also terrorist groups, Boko Haram, as well as ISIS, West Africa, which have been operating in the country and terrorizing the population. So as a result of these conflicts, thousands of people have lost their lives, and over 2 million Cameroonians have been forcibly displaced. And those are the reasons why TPS has been designated for the country.
I like that you gave that explanation, Diana, because while Modeste was talking, my mind was like, okay, it seems like the crisis is mainly toward, or the violence is mainly toward the English speaker Cameroonese. If that was the case, why would the United States grant TPS to any Cameroonese living in the United States? I would have thought like it would be just geared toward the English speaker from Cameroon. But you just mentioned also the Boko Haram, which is a big issue in West Africa. I would say almost every country in West Africa is being literally going through this. I'm originally from Mali, even though I'm American today, but my country is been going through this for years. And I'm not saying 1 year or 2 years, it's more than a decade. So thank you so much for explaining that. The next question will be for HIWOT. How does that affect Cameroonian national currently living in the United States? The fact that they've been designated as under TPS.
I mean, it's great news, right? So if they, meet the requirements, they can apply, they can live better lives. Folks that were previously not documented or had unlawful status will be able to get a work permit, be able to work, move freely without, having that fear of being attacked or, looked after. And I have a lot of folks that are undocumented from various communities. And when TPS is, when they know that TPS is available and they're like ready to apply, once they get that status, they're a whole different person.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I would like us to go back now to the beneficiary. What will happen to those people under TPS? What will be the kind of benefit that they will have? Andy, can we please have that now on the screen? Over to you here.
Sure. The most important things is you get to stay here and you may not be removed. Have that protection. So for folks that are in removal proceedings or whatnot, or if they have some sort of undocumented status, they're usually in some sort of situations where they are likely to be removed. So if they're in removal proceeding and there's a removal order and there's a TPS available, they're not going to be removed. So it's an eligibility and it's a benefit to remain in the United States. The second one is an earlier one that I talked about, is the fact that they can have a work permit. And then lastly, although I don't advise this as much, simply because you're not guaranteed a return back to the US, you are eligible to do travel authorization. I understand some folks may want to go to different countries outside of their own countries. I don't advise folks, if you already apply for asylum, don't go back to Cameroon. It is not a good idea. Even TPS, it kind of looks suspicious. So if you want a travel document and you want to just take a break from America and want to go to Mexico, I had a client in that situation, it's fine. But I think unless you have some sort of, status, like a green card or a citizenship, a travel document is a protection, but at the same time, it's not a guarantee for you to come back to the US. So I advise folks not to travel, even though they have a travel document, unless it's an emergency or that they really need to travel to be with their families.
Oh, wow. That's great to know. Absolutely. Modeste, do you want to ask an additional question, or can we move to the next question?
Yes, I would love to ask what happens to the beneficiaries when the secretary terminates the foreign state's TPS designation?
We're going to get that to in a moment. We have that covered. So, yeah, we'll talk about it in a second. So, of course, to qualify for TPS, beneficiary must meet the eligibility standard. We talked on that a little bit, but now I would like to give more opportunity for HIWOT to go into the detail of that. Could you please explain to us the eligibility standard that beneficiary must meet to qualify for TPS, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Pastor. So first of all, and one of the most important things is that you must be a national of the country. So you have to show evidence showing that you are a Cameroonian national. And everybody's like, oh, that should be easy. There's a passport or there's a birth certificate. In many of the situations, that's not likely, and it's just hard. I remember when we had Liberia, and we had to work with the embassies to get some documentation to certified. So if folks have a hard time proving their nationality, embassies and organizations like ours are more than happy to help you to make that connection. The second requirement is you have to have continuous residence since April 14, 2022, which is what I touched on a little bit earlier, that you have to have been a resident. You have to have been living in the US and have some sort of contact since then. And then physically, you have to have been here since June 7th, 2022. And that's just a random day, honestly. That's when the designation came out. But initially, the original date was April 14, 2022. And then you have to make sure that you're not subject to TPS bar. So there's some criminal backgrounds or other like really severe immigration issue that you should not have. I'd say like TPS is one of the nicer benefits that doesn't force you to get a waiver if you have some issues in your immigration history. So if you've been here for a long time, obviously you attempt to get some sort of benefit. You may have failed, you may have a removal order, you're here on documents, or you never applied. So don't be discouraged to apply for TPS, because it does, as a matter of policy, waives a lot of previous immigration issues, which makes it a really great benefit because it's really trying to benefit the people that are in the country. It's not trying to make it hard for them to get it. There are a lot of benefits in immigration that we just have like tons of evidence and tons of waivers that requires tons of things to do. But I feel like TPS is definitely one of the more generous benefits that's available to folks for the designated country in Cameroon. And I just encourage people to apply.
Yeah. Thank you so much, HIWOT. We are now going to take a short break. Please stay with us. We will get back to you in a few seconds. Andy, let's have a commercial break, please. We are back, and now I would like us to talk about termination of TPS, eligibility, and employment. I'm going to let Modest ask this question to HIWOT regarding what would happen if the Secretary of State terminates a country designation. Over to you, Modest.
Yeah, thanks for coming back to that, because the crisis that has led to this has not ended, and now what happens to the beneficiaries when the Secretary terminates a foreign state's TPS designation? Because majority are still on their way coming. The crisis are still continuing. There's still on legal arrest in Cameroon, on detention, and folks are fleeing. So what happens when that when the Secretary terminates a foreign state's TPS designation?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think it's important for folks to know that you lose the TPS on the last day of designation. That doesn't necessarily mean like once you lose that, you should leave immediately. So the bad news is if you didn't have any lawful status before TPS, you're not going to have any lawful status after it ends, which is like on December 7th, 2023. However, if you have other status pending, say for instance, you had an asylum, U visa, or VAWA, you can maintain it. And then you can also, another thing that could potentially happen is, say for instance, if you were in removal proceedings, and then if DHS motions for them to be open, they can execute it and you can be removed. And similarly with the final removal order. So that's why TPS is so great, because it stops these things for the period that it was designated. But basically you go back to the status that you were initially, you initially had.
Thank you so much, HIWOT. Modeste, would you like to add something? Oh, Diana?
Yes. Yeah, I think I would love to get like some elaborations. What must Cameroonians do to register for the TPS based on the designation of Cameroon?
If you don't mind, Modeste, we're going to get to that in a moment.
Okay.
We really want to go slow tonight, just to make sure that we are going through all the steps that are necessary for our Cameroonese community to understand. But meanwhile, I think Diana was wanted to say something.
Yes. Another piece that I wanted to add about what happens when TPS is terminated. One of the things that we work to do is to make sure that TPS is not terminated, particularly when the conditions in the country have not improved, and things are still happening in the country that make it unsafe. That is the situation with Cameroon, and so currently we are working to pressure to ask the administration to extend TPS for Cameroon, and not only extend it, but redesignate it. Redesignating it means to move up that April date that HIWOT talked about. Currently, you have to have been in the US since April 2022. We are asking the government to move that date up so that Cameroonians who came to the US after April 2022 are also able to benefit from TPS. So, we'll talk about it in our call to action, but we want the Cameroonian community to know that, the deadline coming up, or the expiration coming up in December, is not the end of the line, or the end of it. We have to fight to get it extended for more time, because the conditions remain unsafe in Cameroon.
Thank you so much, Diana, for that explanation. Modeste, you want to add something?
Yes, thank you, Diana, for that move for designation, because crises are still going on. I think my worry is about newcomers, those who are still moving in, because as we recently, a lot of other chaos due to what is going on already. When the military are trying to resolve stuff, following the military methods, and there is no room for discussion, more people, more movement continues, and majority of them English-speaking Cameroonians, and same like French-speaking Cameroonians, who are sympathizers of the English situation. They are running, and more of them are still coming in, and the eligibility talks of a particular date you must have been in the US. What if folks still fleeing the situation come in yesterday or today? Any other situation you guys are looking for to fight to see that it gets put in the process to favor these folks?
If somebody were to come in today or, tomorrow, fleeing from persecution in their country, asylum is an option for them. If they make it to the US, if they make it out of Cameroon and are in another country, they can also apply for refugee status and then be resettled in another country as a refugee. So there are options available for people who are fleeing dangerous conditions in their countries, and TPS is just one of them.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. Our next question will go to HIWOT. Could you please enlighten us on the eligibility for employment process? Let's have that on the screen, Andy.
Yeah, sure. Once you filed for the the TPS, and that's approved, and you can file it concurrently with your employment, you may file a form called I-765. And that is a fee of $410, but that fee can also change based on your age, right? So for instance, if you're under 14 or over 65, you don't have to pay it. But most importantly, if you are low income or if you have some sort of hardship, you can also apply for a fee waiver. So you can apply for employment concurrently at the same time as you apply for your TPS.
Yeah, absolutely. And the next question, I will let Modest ask that on behalf of his Cameroonian brothers and sisters regarding registration for the TPS. Modest?
Yes, thank you for that opportunity, because the question like this has put me at the forefront with a lot of people, like what must we do to register for TPS based on the designation of Cameroon. So that is one of the most pressing question some of these folks were asking me when I reached out.
Yeah, as you see on the screen, you submit the form 821, which is the form that you have to submit to be registered. You have to pay the filing fee, which is $135. But if you include the employment card, then it would increase, I believe, to $545. But you can also do a fee waiver with this application. And then actually, this is not just a form. So it's supplemented with the eligibility requirements that I mentioned earlier. So when you submit the form, after you fill it out, you have to show your continuous residence since April, your physical presence since June, and your nationality. Those three things are super important, I would say, in addition to the form. Submitting the form without supplemental evidence is not going to be fruitful. So make sure that when you submit the application, you either get professional help from an attorney, simply because you need to figure out, whether or not, one, you're eligible, or if there's something that needs to be mentioned in the form. It's important as part of your immigration history. So especially if you have like a pending asylum, that needs to make sure we need to make sure that it is also consistent with your asylum application. So there's just some small nuances that are impactful to your TPS application. So a lot of folks in our community are, experts and people that we feel comfortable with, and we go to them and we ask them, what do I need to do? And they fill out, the immigration forms are so easy, right? But so misleading and deceiving that it really impacts your life. So that's the thing with the form. So it's definitely has to take into consideration with a lot of the immigration history and be filled with somebody who's a professional, somebody who has knowledge.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're saying that here, because I believe it was in December or January, and then last year also, I did a talk show about that, how to avoid common immigration mistake as a newcomer in the United States, or when you're planning to move. And I had two different lawyers, one in French and another in English, talking about that. So I will make sure to put the link of those talk shows also in the description. for people to go back and watch this, because it's like a lawyer here said, it's very critical to avoid mistake in your application. Number one, it can delay the process. And second, some mistake, I am sorry, here can correct me if I'm wrong, but some mistake, if you make it in your application and you raise a red flag with the immigration, the probability of you for to be able to fix that and for them to believe you is slim to none. Am I correct here?
I don't want to like, so there's errors that you can make. For instance, today I was at like an interview and somebody made a mistake on their birth date, right? That's fine. Like nothing is going to happen. We just correct the date because you have supplemental evidence showing the birth date of the applicant or the petitioner certificate, right? But there's just some things that you claim that may have some discrepancy between what you said before and what you're saying now, but that's also integral to you getting that benefit. And I don't want to go into too much in the detail, but you know, it just depends on what type of mistake that you're making. I would say
exactly. So that's why we are really emphasizing here, getting the proper help is critical, because just like Hiyot said, there are some people in the community that claim that they can do things for you, but they really don't know what they are doing, and they can really mess you up if things are not done properly. So the next question is still with Hiyot. Can you briefly explain to us how can TPS beneficiary obtain an employment authorization document, which is called EAD?
Sure, I feel like that's the most exciting part, because you know, when people apply for TPS, they're like, okay, I'm registered, like what can I do? I want to work, I want some money. So that's where the work permit comes in, and you apply using what I said earlier, using the form I-765. And again, you can supplement it with the TPS application and apply at the same time, or you know, register and then apply later. But I encourage folks to just apply at the same time so you can get your work permit as soon as possible. And you can get a social security number at the same time as well.
Yeah, and of course, that's critical what you're saying, applying at the same time when they are applying for the TPS, because remember, it has a timeline. So the sooner you act, the quicker you can be legal, if we may say that, in court for that period of time, and you can, you know, start enjoying the benefit. So thank you for explaining that. This is going to be my last question to Diana before we wrap up. Could you please tell us a little bit about your organization? We would like to know more about it.
Sure. So African Communities Together, or ACT, or ACT, people call it many different things. But we are a grassroots organization of African immigrants fighting for civil rights, opportunity, and a better life for our families here in the US. The work that we do falls into three broad categories. So one, we connect African immigrants with services, including providing free immigration legal services to African immigrants where we have chapters. So HIWOT is our attorney in the DC area. The second bucket of work we do is advocate at the local, state, and federal level for policies that improve the lives of the African community here in the US. So that's a lot of what my work is, that advocacy piece. And then third, we work to develop African leaders in their communities. So, you know, we want to see Africans doing well here. And a lot of that is to be able to organize your community, advocate for yourself, and really be a leader. And that's what we try to do with our communities.
Thank you so much, Diana. And you know, the first time that you and I we discussed, it was supposed to be just like a 2-minute phone call, but it ended up like being almost like an hour, because I could really relate to what you are doing and what my organization is also doing. Leadership excellence for women by women. Even though it talks about excellency for women, it also, you know, take into consideration our men. But I've been in the United States for 21 years. And this is another call to action that I really want to make here. I believe Modest mentioned something earlier on. It can make us smile, but when you go deeper, it's a little bit sad also that we only gather for party. Let's just talk, plain here. Other community get together for projects for their countries, get together to set business in this country, in the United States, to break ground, whereas some of us, or most of us, of the African diaspora, not only in the United States, it's in many countries. In doing my talk show for the past 2 years, I've dealt with many people from different countries. And like I've said, every Friday when this talk show go out, we have at least 150,000 views around the world. But what I'm noticing is our community has a much more work to do. We have to take ourselves seriously. I am sorry to say it, this party thing and not caring about the country where you immigrate, it is time for us to wake up. We see the Spanish coming here, get organized, and then do better than many of us. It is not acceptable. Yes, we can party, but let's face it, United States is a country where if you come and you are decided to party, you're gonna party 1,000%. And 20 years later, you look back, you have not accomplished anything. So please, let's get our act together. And just like Diana said, let's get organized. And I'm really hoping also that this won't be the last time that I will have HIWOT and Diana on the platform, because we definitely want to work with you and come together just for excellency, do better, and be better in this community, in this country, which is basically the best country where you can become anything that you want. So I was shocked when Diana gave me the statistic about the low number of Cameroonians living in the United States who took advantage of this benefit. So I am going to close with that for tonight. Diana Konaté, HIWOT BERIHUN, and Modest MBUNWE. Yes, totally.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you again for this great discussion. And we hope to see you next week for a much detailed talk about what needs to happen and how Cameroonians living in the United States can take the proper action. So I would like to thank the three of you for your time this evening, and we'll see you next week. Meanwhile, precious women of valor, precious men of valor, dear viewers, we are at the end of the first episode of our talk show tonight. Thank you again for staying with us, and we will meet you next Friday, 2:30 p.m. Washington, D.C. time, 8:30 p.m. GMT, for episode 2 of our talk show, where we will discuss about the fast approaching deadline to apply, and then also we will give an opportunity for Diana and HIWOT to make a call to action toward the Cameroonese community. Thank you again for staying with us. And